When Elena married Andrew, she believed stability was the same thing as happiness, and for a long time she convinced herself that the quiet life they built together was enough. That love didn't need excitement, only endurance, that marriage was about showing up and doing what was expected. But as the years passed, their conversations shrank into logistics, bills, groceries, work schedules, and polite questions asked out of habit rather than curiosity. And Andrew, once attentive, became distant without noticing it himself. Always tired, always distracted, always somewhere else even when he was sitting next to her. And Elena learned how to be lonely in the presence of another person, which is a special kind of loneliness that slowly erodes your sense of self without making a sound. And one evening when Andrew came home late again and fell asleep in front of the television without asking how her day was, Elena opened YouTube just to fill the silence, not knowing that a single recommended video would change the direction of her life. The video was from an American YouTuber named Mark Reeves, a man in his early 40s who talked calmly about relationships, emotional neglect, and the lies people tell themselves to survive unhappy marriages. And he didn't shout or blame or dramatize. He just spoke with quiet honesty, looking straight into the camera as if he were talking to one person. And Elena felt something tighten in her chest because his words described feelings she had never said out loud, feelings she barely allowed herself to think. And she watched another video, then another, and soon it became her nightly ritual to put on headphones while her husband slept beside her and listen to a stranger from another country explain emotions she had buried for years. And at first she told herself it was harmless, that listening wasn't betrayal, that everyone needed somewhere to feel understood. But understanding has a way of creating attachment, and attachment has a way of crossing invisible lines. And one night, after a particularly difficult day, Elena left a short comment under one of Mark's videos thanking him for putting words to something she thought was wrong with her. She didn't expect a response and forgot about it, but the next morning she saw a notification that made her heart race. Mark had replied, kindly and simply, telling her she wasn't broken and that her feelings made sense, and that should have been the end of it, but instead it was the beginning, because they started exchanging messages, slowly at first, carefully, respectfully, never explicitly inappropriate, but deeply personal. And Mark listened in a way Andrew no longer did. He asked questions. He remembered details. He validated her experiences without trying to fix her. And Elena found herself waiting for his messages, smiling at her phone, feeling seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. And she told herself it was still innocent because there was no physical contact, no flirting, no promises, just conversation. But emotional intimacy doesn't announce itself as danger. It arrives quietly, wrapped in relief. And when Mark mentioned he would be traveling to Europe for a conference and suggested they meet for coffee if she was comfortable, Elena hesitated, staring at the screen, knowing that this choice mattered, knowing that agreeing meant admitting to herself that something in her marriage had already ended. And she agreed anyway, telling herself it was just coffee, just a conversation between two people who had talked too long through a screen. And when they met, there was no dramatic moment, no movie-like tension, just a calm familiarity that felt more intimate than passion. Mark was exactly who he was online, attentive, present, unhurried, and for the first time in years Elena felt fully awake, fully herself. And when he gently touched her hand during the conversation, she didn't pull away, because in that moment she realized she had crossed the line long before that touch. She had crossed it the night she chose to share her inner world with another man while keeping it hidden from her husband, and the physical affair that followed didn't feel like the beginning of betrayal but like its confirmation. And when Elena returned home and looked at Andrew, listening to him talk about work as if nothing had changed, she understood with painful clarity that she could not go back to pretending, that the worst part wasn't the guilt but the absence of it, because she felt honest for the first time. And within weeks she asked for a divorce, not because of Mark, as he himself insisted, refusing to be the reason or the escape, but because the marriage had been over long before YouTube ever entered her life. And Mark didn't offer her a future or grand promises or a new identity. He simply gave her a mirror. And sometimes that is enough to break a life open. And today Elena lives alone, not with Mark and not with Andrew, but with herself, and she understands now that Betrayal isn't always about sex or secrecy. Sometimes it's about choosing truth after years of silence. And sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't falling in love with someone else, but finally admitting that you stopped loving the life you were living. And every once in a while she still sees Mark's videos appear in her feed. And she watches them quietly, without commenting, without reaching out, grateful not for the affair, but for the moment she stopped lying to herself. Because some stories don't end with a new romance. They end with awareness, and that is sometimes the hardest ending of all.